What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Affinity Edge presented by the Esports Department. Today, you can visit the esportsdepartment.com and enter the code IEDGE to receive 10% off of a subscription off the website. Now, I know League of Legends is ending pretty soon here. We've only got 3 more series to go. So you should also check out our CSGO projections if you want to continue to dip your toes into the esports. But as far as today goes, we're talking the semifinals since the quarterfinals have now concluded. I would like to welcome our 2 analysts from the esports department. I would want to welcome Michael, who can be found at League of Items on Twitter, and also Alan, who can be found at Lcspicks on Twitter. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing okay. Chopped way too many times on Saturday. Was that Saturday or Sunday? I don't know what day it was. Days have kind of just blended together at this point.
There's no such thing as days anymore. I'm doing well, doing pretty good. Was a little too heavy on Gen G last weekend betting and DFS, so that was a disappointing result for me. But otherwise, bounce back time.
That's a rough one. Well, Michael, a win's a win in my book, so even if you chop, that's some good money. Well, since the quarterfinals are finally over, like I said, we had some surprises. JDG have been eliminated by Sunny, and Fnatic actually gave Top Esports a run for their money. I guess one thing you can take from that is that don't take your foot off the gas when you're going up against Top Esports because it can come back to haunt you. Do you guys have any quick thoughts on how the quarterfinals played out?
Alan, you want to go
Michael?
first?
Oh, all right. Yeah. The Fnatic one, I was surprised because I do think that Top Esports is a very good team, but I wasn't shocked, I would say. I think that they have some pretty clear weaknesses that we'll get into later. But I wasn't totally shocked there. And then the JDG and Suning one, I was a little more shocked, I think. I thought that JDG was the best team in the tournament, although Suning has played really, really well lately, and especially at Worlds. And so, again, I wasn't completely shocked, but I don't know. I think a lot of people were completely shocked by both of those results, especially the Fnatic taking on Top Esports because they were the odds-on favorite at the beginning of the tournament. But I think if you dive a little deeper, they have some weaknesses.
Yeah, so I'll just run through all of them real quick. So Gen G against G2, I think G2, they just did a great job preparing for the series, and I think that Gen G, they just didn't show up. And it's the kind of thing where if they played each other again, I would bet it the same way. I had more Gen G than I had G2. The reason I had G2 lineups was because I knew that they were going to be low owned, and I wanted some hedge stacks. But like I said, if they played again, I would just pick Gen G again because the process shouldn't change. Like I think that over time, Gen G is a better team than G2 and would be able to figure out like good strategies to beat G2 consistently. But when Caps is playing at that level, I think it's really tough. And the jungle matchups were pretty bad in general for Gen G in that series. Top Esports against Fnatic, I woke up and Fnatic won game 1, and I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I was watching, that instantly woke me up. Like I tried to wake up right around 5 or 6 o'clock just to see what happened in game 1 to see if it was worth watching. That was one of the only outcomes that made me want to watch. And game 2 happens, and I'm like, wow, is Top Esports really about to crash out of this? And I have to listen to people talking about Europe for the next 7 months or next year until the next end of Worlds. And then Top Esports just turned it on. I think that the takeaway should be that Karsa is not a quote-unquote true carry jungler. Like when I talk about carry junglers now, it's about Graves, Kindred, Nidalee, like these kinds of champions. Karsa can play those champions. That is not Karsa's bread and butter. So that's what always scares me with Karsa. The thing is that these champions like Lee Sin, even if it's not the meta champion, it always has chances to it's kind of like a backdoor cover, or not a backdoor cover. It's like a 55-45 where you know that you're opting into the 45, but you're really good at the 45. Which
It's
is
like playing fast break basketball, right? Like there's always that chance that you're gonna catch them off guard that day. Like if everybody's playing these farming centric junglers, and then all of a sudden you're on a Lee Sin and you're ganking at 2 minutes, you might
yeah,
might
so,
catch
yeah.
a win that way.
So game 1, it was Graves against Kindred, Selfmade won on Kindred. Game 2 was Jarvan against Kindred, and that was just insane that they went for that. And then Kindred won that one again. Third game, it was Lee Sin against Kha'Zix. I was pretty surprised that they picked Kha'Zix there, and when they locked in Kha'Zix and Vel'Koz with a Jhin, I was pretty positive that Top Esports was going to win that one easily, because you don't really have a consistent damage source. You have a burst assassin in Lee Sin, you have a mage that's very skill shot reliant with Vel'Koz, and then you have a burst AD carry. So I thought that was pretty doomed. The next game, it was Nidalee against Graves. And Karsa played out of his mind on Nidalee. This is not a typical Nidalee performance from Karsa. There's a reason why Top Esports is not always like looking for Graves and Nidalee in these drafts. And that's what scares me a lot about Top Esports in general. And then game 5, the fact that they picked Gragas, I thought it was pretty funny. I don't understand why they thought the draft needed to go that way. You have a Gragas who's like gonna fall off late game unless he gets really far ahead in the early game. Then you have a Gangplank with a TF. It was just really
Felt the
weird.
same way in game 3 too. I'm like, you're gonna pull out like Kha'Zix and Vel'Koz and Jhin, like you said. Like, why are we going to like some shitter composition when you've been winning on other stuff? I know that they got banned out basically. I think they banned Graves and Kindred in that one, but I would never go to Kha'Zix in that situation. I feel like they tried to style on him a little bit.
Yeah, so I don't know what order it was, but it looks like Kindred and Graves were banned in separate parts of the pick ban. So that's one of the things that invalidates Jhin for me. Like, if you're not going to have a consistent damage source in the jungle, then you can't play Jhin. But that's basically it for the Top Esports versus Fnatic matchup. I think that we just get the best of Top Esports from now on, which is scary for Sunning. Sunning, I love Sunning. I've been talking about Sunning for months, since before the summer even started, and I'm extremely excited that they're in the semifinals. I don't think that they have very good winning chances against Top Esports because stylistically they don't match up well. But we'll talk about that later on today. In their matchup against JDG, it kind of exposed the weakness of JDG, which I always knew was Yagao and Loken are overrated by most people. When they win, they look good. That's fine. You need to show me that you can win from losing positions. That's really what separates good teams from bad teams. In terms of Kanavi, this is something that I've been thinking about more and more as the World's Championship went on. Kanavi is very similar to Peanut in the sense that they are true carry junglers. They were carry players before Kindred, Graves, Nidalee were broken. So these are the kinds of players who can pull out an Elise or a Rek'Sai, a Lee Sin, and carry a game through more like solo queue style tactics, not just like perma farming and stuff like that. That's really what fundamentally changed this meta into the one that we're seeing now, with farming junglers being extremely good, because that economy is not normally available to junglers. So they're either a damage dealer, Lee Sin, Elise, Rek'Sai, or like even a Gragas makes sense in that meta, where you're just trying to create ganks, get your laners ahead, and then let the game kind of play out. Or you could be like a tank jungler, like a J4, Sejuani, something like that. And that's how we normally think of junglers. But now with this farming style where you have the econ that solo laners do, the game is just kind of fundamentally changed. And that's not Kanavi's strength. Kanavi should be better at it than Kanavi played at the World Championship, is kind of how I look at it. So the fact that they were opting into like Lilia was kind of weird to me. Graves should have been the most important champion, I think, for Kanavi to play consistently. But I think a lot of teams just took it away. And then Dom won against DRX. I think DRX's coaching staff destroyed that series. there's not really much to say. Their compositions were horrible all 3 games. They didn't have engage, and when you're even in college, the college matches, if you don't give your players easy engage tools, they're always going to second guess them. Well, not always, but they're going to second guess themselves much more often than they normally would, because it's a tough game to play when you're losing. So if you're already losing, you can't establish that dominant position around Dragon or something, then the game's almost impossible to play. That's basically, those are all of my thoughts. Most of my thoughts on the quarterfinals.
Sounds good. And then I also want to apologize to the Fnatic fans. I did wake up as soon as Game 4 was ending and watched Game 5, so maybe I cursed them a little bit. Fnatic
good job.
Was looking good there.
Thank you for restoring sanity to the world.
Oh, sorry. All right. Moving on. We got our first game that's going to be going on Saturday at 5 in the morning Central Time, where I'm located. And it's going to be G2 Esports versus Damwon Gaming. Both of these teams won their quarterfinal match with a clean sweep 3-0. The series obviously favored towards Damwon Gaming, but I feel like G2 aren't dead. I'm kind of drinking the Kool-Aid on this one. Alan, how do you see this series playing out?
Give me all the Kool-Aid. I think Damwon's the best team in the world. I have no reason to doubt them anymore. They sweep every time they come up against a good team. I know Michael doesn't love stats. I'm into stats. Their stats are insane. They are like no other team has ever been, especially their gold spent differential, which I think is the most meaningful League of Legends stats. They had a 15% gold spent differential in the LCK this year. That's completely unheard of in a league that strong, and they just dominated the LCK. You could say G2 dominates the LCK, but you would also have to credit that Damwon completely dominated the teams that G2 has dominated so far. I think that lane by lane, it's all favored to Damwon except for the mid lane, and even there, I think it's just a wash, basically. And G2 needs Caps to be able to get out of lane for them to win, and I don't think that he's going to be able to do that against Showmaker, and I think that we could see Damwon sweep again here against G2.
Interesting. I obviously agree that DRX is the better team, but I am so hyper focused on like the only ways that the only chances that G2 has to win would be that Damwon underestimating G2, which I think is not likely at this point, but it's very possible. And what that would look like to me is if we have Damwon like just picking TF blind like every single game, not focusing on the jungle matchup and giving up like the mid jungle matchup, or giving up winning chances to G2 through the mid lane and jungle, which should be non-existent. So like if Damwon is blue side, they pick TF 2-3 and then they give up Silas or something, that could be a really bad lane for them. If G2 plays some really kind of cheesy composition where Jankos is completely taken off of carry junglers and is basically just like actually not off of the farming junglers, but would be on like something like Hecarim, because I think Damwon again could pick themselves into a corner by picking something like Graves, Nidalee, or Kindred, where Hecarim does have some good chances to beat those champions, especially if they also pick something like Twisted Fate, because then you could do some kind of like Hecarim, Shen, Galio, like some kind of cheesy comp like that, where it's less about being a skilled team. Think about how World Elite plays. So if World Elite gets this kind of wombo combo team composition, then you have chances to win these early and mid game team fights where you snowball that into a couple of dragons. Then you force Damwon into a position where they have to walk into you at a dragon or a baron with like a vision deficit. Those could be all really scary situations. If I'm looking at it lane by lane, like the top differential should be gigantic with Nogri against Wunder, but Wunder is the kind of player who has pocket picks that could contest kind of what they're doing. But I'm never going to say like Wunder should win this matchup. So maybe they have some kind of homebrew that's going to work, but it's definitely unlikely. In the jungle, like I said, Canyon is a player that I've just not been correct about all year long. I underestimated Canyon for a long time and gave too much of the credit to Showmaker, I think. But Jankos does not play this meta well. But the fact that I can so easily say that makes me feel like I'm missing out on something. So with Jankos, is he good enough at Graves to make it a true contested pick? That's really the question mark, because he either has to play that to a very high level, or he has to have some kind of Hecarim level pick where it's good against a lot of the generic champions that we're going to see in most pick bans. And then Showmaker against Caps. Showmaker is very good. Caps is also very good. I think that they're both in the top 5 mid laners. In the Caps is right there. That's the other thing. I feel like I just underestimate all these players too much from G2, and that's going to get me killed. Because, like, that's my biggest fear, is G2 just beating Dom1 Gaming, and then I have to hear it for so long. So I'm trying to, like, I'm trying to lessen the blow by making it seem closer, so I'm even happier when Dom1 wins later on. But the bot lane, again, this is another thing. Beryl has not... I think I was listening to some people say that Beryl played well this World Championship so far. Beryl has been a huge question mark. Ghost plus Beryl is not anywhere near as good as their top half of the map. So I think that Perks and Mickey can definitely have some interesting lane combinations, like an interesting 80 plus support pairing that exploits something about the mid jungle duo. Like there are definitely ways to do it. I just don't know which direction G2 is going to go. Like if you think of Senna Wukong, if we start picking away Pantheon, so it's Senna Pantheon, with like a Silas, like I could just definitely see it, because Senna really empowers fighters and bruisers from the other lanes to be more impactful, because you get the additional pseudo tankiness out of them because they can continuously regenerate health. So like I want Dom1 to win. I want G2 to make it competitive. I want G2 to play really interesting champions and actually like try to carve out a competitive edge that way. But it just seems so unlikely. And that's why if I was looking at the money line, it's plus 190 for G2. I think that's a good line for G2. I was kind of surprised, or for Dom1, sorry, because I thought that it would be like Dom1 minus 400 or 500. But I think the fact that it's a Western book, maybe that's why it's the way that it is.
There's actually been line movement. I've watched it during the week towards G2. So G2's odds have actually gotten lower because people are piling on G2. So I think there are a lot of G2 believers out there, which makes me like Damwon even more in this spot, because last I saw they were around like minus 265. So I think that's a pretty good number for a money line on them. That's like what, 70%ish?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess like if you want to think about what are the really easy public storylines that are exploitable, it would be like the whole Caps thing. It's like, Caps is better than Showmaker somehow. Like just people making that argument. Oh, G2 is the best team that a Western region has ever made. Look at how good Perks has been playing.
Owns the LCK.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Exactly. So all of those kinds of things are what might impact most people who maybe watch it less diligently than other people, like other analysts. I'm just so afraid of the potential future where G2 beats Dom1. And the thing is, if Fnatic was able to pull off their win against Top Esports, like I'm not upset. I wouldn't be upset that Fnatic won. I'd be happy that Fnatic played really well against Top Esports because it's more interesting League of Legends to watch. Like I want competitive games all the time. I just hate dealing with the people who like yell at me in comments and stuff about this. So yeah, that's basically it for this one. I think that when I'm putting together my lineups, I think that I'm more afraid of these games going under the kill totals, because I think that Dom1 is capable of winning in like low kill score games where it's like 14-8 or 14-6. But that also scares me for their winning chances, because those are the games that I think if they have like a 10-6 lead and like a 2,000 gold lead around a dragon or around a baron, they just take a team fight knowing that they're ahead and stronger and better in general. But if one of those team fights goes wrong, the entire game can get spun on its head. So that kind of scares me. That's almost why I like the Chinese style even more right now, where you're continuously fighting over objectives. You're not giving the other team a chance to breathe at any point in the game, and then getting this gigantic gold lead. It's completely unnecessary to win, but it feels better. It's more demoralizing for the losing team, and you give the enemy more opportunities to get back into the game, but they're less likely to get back in the game from any one of those plays, if that makes sense. So like going for a 2v2 instead of waiting for a 5v5 around dragon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll start with Alan on this one. You guys did talk about the lane matchups. Who is the weakest link on G2, and who is the weakest link on Damwon?
I think the answer is the same position for both. I think it's Ghost and it's Perks. And so that's why I don't have a lot of hope for G2, because I like Damwon's jungler better. I like Damwon's top better. I like Damwon's mid about the same. And then in the bot lane, I think it's pretty even. Although I would agree with Michael. I haven't been impressed by Beryl at this World Championship. He had a very good split in the LCK, so yeah. I think he could show up at any time. But I really like Mickey X. I think he's a very smart player. I think he thinks about the game really well and is kind of the leader on a lot of the good G2 engages along with Caps. So I think that matchup's pretty close, but I think those are the two weak links, and they're in the same place, so I don't really see an edge there.
That's interesting. I've seen a lot of, I guess it's just online, maybe it's memeing on Jankos, but I've seen that G2, everyone's like, Jankos is really weak this split, or this, during this tournament. So I'm surprised to hear Perks.
Yeah.
Michael, yourself, who's the weak link on both sides?
Yeah, I think it is Jankos, and I think it's for the inability to play the meta junglers to their like highest level, which doesn't mean that he can't like pick them and win a game. It just means he's not going to create the same like winning difference that somebody else would on the same champion in a similar game state. When Alan's talking about the mid lane between Showmaker and Caps, I think that it's both like the relative strength for their team. They're both very high. I do think that Showmaker is better, and I guess it's the thing is, we can get into a series where Damwon wins 3-2 and Showmaker doesn't pop off on any of the games and like has like relatively low kill scores and like low KDAs, but the influence that Showmaker has with the amount of attention he absorbs and resources that he has, I think it's just like difficult to quantify sometimes about how good he plays. And I guess he's really at his best when he's either getting a pentakill on Kassadin or like strangling the other team with a Twisted Fate game. And I think that's why it's so difficult to appreciate what he's doing compared to somebody like Caps. You have Caps running around on a Silas. It's going to be a lot of flashy plays, a lot of movement on the screen. It's very easy to see that it's like a high skill cap champion, where a lot of the skill testing of a Twisted Fate is like when they're looking for engages, how they use their ultimates, how they're able to maneuver a team fight, and the laning phase. So I definitely agree that Caps is like the strength of G2 right now, and it's just going to be so difficult to give either player the true amount of credit they deserve unless they're getting like a random pentakill. For Damwon's weakest link, I do think it is Beryl, just based off of performance, and I think talent level, I think Beryl's probably also right there with Ghost in terms of being the lower side of the team. And when I was watching them during this summer, I loved them because they played a lot of Senna Pantheon, and that's like extremely good right now. So I loved them for that, but they really haven't been playing that every time it's available, which I'm not sure why, but I'm sure they have good reasons for it. So.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Jankos, I think the thing about Jankos that people are going to point to is that he just had a very good series against Genji playing on some of those carry junglers. But
Yeah.
Genji, I don't. They threw that series. Like they threw game one and never came back
Yeah.
from the like their minds completely broke after that to me. That game one was one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen in League of Legends. You have three dragons and you're on even gold, even kills, and then you just don't set up around the dragon for the
Yeah.
fourth dragon. It was insane. I could not believe it as a Genji better,
Yeah.
as yeah, someone who thinks that Genji is good. I was so frustrated by that. Klid had a very bad series, and I think I think I might have overrated him generally. I kind of went back and watched some of their games today after being like, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't really been that good this year, and he doesn't really play the farming style junglers very well. And so Jankos got the better of him, but I don't think he can do that against Canyon,
Yeah.
who is yeah, go ahead.
No, you can go. I'm still looking something up.
Who's very practiced on those champions. So like it's gonna be those are all going to be contested by Canyon the entire time. Whereas Klid, you're kind of like we're okay if he's playing Nidalee or whatever it is.
Yeah. What I was going to say is about T1, Klid when he was on T1, and it's a lot of Lee Sin, Elise, Gragas, Rek'Sai, Skarner. So like I said, it's the same thing like Karsa or Kanavi. It's like these are carry players from other years trying to adapt to this new carry jungle meta, and it just didn't fit in as well as they should have probably, because the ability is definitely there to play these champions, but they're not the champions that they're comfortable with. Like I don't really even know how to explain it other than that, because it should be champions they play a lot in solo queue. Like I just don't know why it wouldn't translate into their professional matches.
Sounds good. I do see that G2 is the cheapest out of the players on the slate, except for mid and AD carry. So if you do feel that G2 is going to pull this one out, you can get some good lineups in and some good captains on the top esports and Sunny, which leads us into our next matchup. On Sunday at 5 in the morning again, we'll see the two LPL teams with Top Esports taking on Sunny. In the summer season, Top Esports won the series between these two 2-0. And then in the summer playoffs, they met again. Top Esports also won that series with a clean sweep of 3-0. So doing some simple math, Top Esports are now 5-0 against Sunny with the two series this year. Michael, my question to you is, can Sunny finally take down the Goliath that is Top Esports?
Yeah, I I've thought about this a decent amount, and I think that all the lanes are much closer than they appear at first. Top Esports against Suning, so 369 against Bin. I think Bin is the better carry player, specifically on Camille, which is like Bin was considered a one-trick Camille for a lot of the year. So if we can get Bin into positive matchups against 369, 369 and Top Esports have like just given the, like, for example, given away Gangplank, played Vladimir, and just tried to scale just as hard as the Gangplank. But in that scenario, Gangplank has the better winning chances where they can like actually win the lane. It's unlikely and it doesn't happen very often, but if you have something like Gangplank with a jungler that can get a couple of kills into the Gangplank during the laning phase as well, then you can really snowball pretty hard. But that's going to require a late game, and I don't know if Suning can really play around the late game, assuming that they're going to get there. SFM against Karsa, SFM is better at the meta champions than Karsa is. So this is another winning opportunity for Suning over Top Esports. The reason why this hasn't happened in their other matches, I haven't looked at the summer ones. I'll do that while Alan is speaking about the matchups. In the spring, these champions were not available to a player like SFM. Now, after patch 10.7, we have this new meta. I feel like that's why I want to look back at the summer matches instead, because if they're already playing things like Graves, Nidalee, Kindred, and they're still losing, then I'd be a little bit more concerned. The fact they got swept twice. But that should be a way to win, especially right now. They seem to be in form. Knight against Angel, that's the biggest discrepancy. I've been low on Angel all year, so maybe I'm wrong, but I just think Knight is just much better than Angel. And Knight hasn't had an amazing World Championship compared to what we saw during the LPL season. So I think that there's still even more upside to Knight in this environment that we might actually get to see. Jackie Love and Yu Yanja against Huanfeng and Sword Art. This is the matchup that I think most people probably have completely wrong. I think that Sunning's bottom lane is actually better than Top Esports as a collective unit. When you have Top Esports playing like Senna, like let's say everybody gets the champions that they want to play, and we have Jackie Love on Senna, Huanfeng on Jin, Sword Art on Thresh, and Yu Yanja on some other kind of champion. Maybe it's like a Tom Kench or something. Like in that scenario, all of the playmaking upside is on Sunning, and the onus is on them to make plays around the map. So I talk shit about Jin all the time. In that matchup specifically, Jin is okay. If we also get a carry jungler that has consistent damage, then Jin is more than okay, and Sunning would be in a very good position to actually win the game. So the question is, can the top lane, where they could theoretically have lane priority, the jungle where they should have priority, the mid lane where they'll most likely have no priority unless Angel gets a pocket pick. Like maybe that's what I'm not taking into consideration enough, is like maybe Angel has 1 or 2 pocket picks that would need to be target banned in a normal scenario but can't be because of the other matchups that are actually going to occur in this pick ban phase. But I think Sunning, like when I'm looking at it just from an analytical perspective, they have a lot of opportunities to make this much closer than people think. But then I always have to remind myself, I'm a huge Sunning fan. Like, am I just seeing this incorrectly? Am I giving them too much credit? So that's what I'm afraid of. But I can at least make the argument that they're definitely a live underdog, which is all I can really ask for as somebody who's going to cheer for them either way.
Yeah, I feel exactly as Michael does, basically. And I did not bet on Suning in the LPL. I didn't bet on them at the World Championship, but they have figured this meta out basically like no one else has, I think. And the pocket pick that you're talking about for Angel is Zoe. I feel like anytime he's on Zoe, they're going to be completely fine. And he also is he's fine at the control mages. Like he's not going to lose you the game on those picks for the most part. And it just feels like right now the mid lane isn't doing that anyway, because people are contesting those jungle camps so heavily that mid laners are kind of out of lane anyway a lot of the time. And so I think that they're going to be okay there. And then I could not agree more about the bot lane. I think that Suning's bot lane is just flat out better than Top Esports. I thought that Fnatic's bot lane in the series was better than Top Esports bot lane. Jackie Love is a coin flipper kind of player who will just die for no reason, and that's, you really don't want that in your AD carry. I mean, he sometimes can outplay, but that's not really the kind of champions that are in the meta right now. Like if it was like Kai'Sa, Xayah, that kind of stuff in the meta, sure, but in this meta, I don't favor his style at all, and I think he's actually been a liability in a few of their games, especially their game against FlyQuest and their 2 losses against Top Esports. And Huanfeng is the exact opposite. He's like super happy to sit on the backline and deal his damage and do his thing, and not miss his skill shots and whatever. He's just a very, very solid player in this meta, and I think that they're in a little bit of trouble there because Sword Art plays engage supports. That's like his main stuff, right? That's his comfort picks, his like Nautilus, his Leonas, that kind of stuff. And that's exactly the kind of thing that you can picture Jackie Love getting into trouble on. So I think that this game, I have this series as a 50-50. Like when I went through and ran, my usual modeling on betting, I put it right around a 50-50. So I think that I will be playing pretty heavily on the Suning side because of the ownership level that you're going to get on them as well. So I like to bump, a little bit my exposure to a team if I think they're also going to be low owned. So I would want 50% of them normally. So I'm going to get probably near 60% of Suning and just hope that that comes off.
Sure. So I went back and looked at the matches from summer, and these were the junglers that SFM played. Volibear. We don't want either of those. Graves, they lost the game on Graves. Olaf, they lost the game on Olaf. And Skarner, they lost the game on Skarner. So one out of the 5 games that they've played so far is similar to what I expect them to play in this upcoming match. They did get Jhin 2 out of the 3 games. I wouldn't put too much stock into that. The fact that that's still lost. Because the other thing is, Huanfeng is not a Jhin player. Like, Huanfeng plays Jhin, but that's not the limit of Huanfeng's abilities. Huanfeng can play things like Draven, which is really supposedly his best champion. Was a Draven one trick coming into the LPL. That's what I remember, at least. Is that there was like a storyline like that, and we did actually see them play it against Team Liquid. So I think that the mechanical upside for Huanfeng is just as high as Jackie Love. Jackie Love is probably one of the most overrated players in the world, which isn't to say that Jackie Love isn't one of the best players in the world. It's just that the perceived gap between Jackie Love and Huanfeng is much larger than it actually is. Because people recognize the name Jackie Love, and Jackie Love has the history of winning a world championship. But if Jackie Love is playing Senna almost every single game, then are they really the ones creating this winning difference for their team? The likelihood is no. So it'll be interesting. I do think that Top Esports should be the favorite. I'm hopeful that Sunning will give us a competitive series, but regardless of what happens in this match, any Sunning supporter has to be extremely happy with how this year has played out.
For sure. I guess I'll pose the same question as in the last series. If you guys had to pick who is the weakest link on each side, Alan, we'll go with you first. Who is it for each team?
Well, I think we were kind of just talking about it. I think that Jackie Love in this meta is a liability for Top Esports. He just gets caught out farming side lanes way too often for me, and that's the kind of player that just drives me insane. So I may be a little too biased on that front. And then Angel is the obvious weak link for. But they've been playing him on the Gallios, they've been playing him on the Twisted Fate, they've been playing him on the Zoes, and his main role there is to get by and then to affect other lanes. And so it hasn't really mattered too much at this World Championship, and it was the same way with Nemesis too, right? Nemesis was the weak link for Fnatic the entire split, and he was eventually the weak link in their series against Top Esports. But when he was able to play some of his comfort, play some of those champions that'll just clear lane and get out into other lanes to affect, it wasn't a problem. And I think that this Worlds has not been nearly as mid-centric as I thought it was going to be. And so teams with weak-ish mid laners, I haven't had as much of a problem with.
Michael, how about you?
Like I said earlier, the thing that scares me the most about this matchup is that stylistically, all of the weaknesses that are already talked about from Top Esports can be exploited by a team like Sunning. So in the top lane, 369, the reason, the meme about 369 is that sometimes he rolls a 3, sometimes he rolls a 6, sometimes he rolls a 9. If 369 gets beaten in this matchup, they're not going to give the amount of credit that they should to Bin. It'll just be like, oh, well, 369 had a bad series, he rolled three threes or something like that, And then in the jungle, SFM against Karsa, if SFM is able to win 2 or 3 of these games, win the matchup 2 or 3 games, whether or not they win the actual game, they're just going to say, oh, well, Fnatic did just as good of a job, Selfmade's just as good as SFM, we shouldn't have been surprised that Karsa had a bad performance because he was already shaky going into the series. There's just a lot of ways that they can backtrack without looking wrong, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then Angel is an actual weak link, compared to Knight. I think that's a true mismatch. And then bot lane, I think even if Alan is right and Jackie Love is the actual weakness in the bot lane, if Top Esports loses, the blame will go to Yu and not Jackie Love. So it's like all of these things are so predictable about how people are going to respond if they win or if they lose, that it makes me feel like I'm seeing it too clearly. So then I just have to think to myself, Top Esports wins in like a landslide. That's really where I'm at right now in terms of like how afraid I am for Suning, because when it lines up this well, I just assume that I'm missing something. Because I mean,
there is the fact that they went 5-0 against them in the summer split, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing today when I was going through the matchup. I was writing on it a little bit, and I was just like, why do I like Suning so much when they've been swept by them? But I think it is what you talked about. I mean, I think that the metagame has changed, and it's changed in their favor since those games a lot.
Well, I don't know if I would say it's changed. Like my viewpoint on the meta is that it's been largely the same since patch 10.7, but there have been champions that come in and out that like fundamentally shift the meta enough so that it doesn't look quite the same, but at its core it really is the same. It's just that a lot of the responses are like banned out. So for example, when Top Esports played Suning on 7:30, what's that? July 30th. It's like Nidalee was banned, Bard was banned, Graves was banned, Jhin was banned. So these were meta champions. The game that we saw was between a Volibear versus Lee Sin, Tahm Kench versus Thresh. But that's because the other champions were not available because they were banned out. So like now we're at the point in the meta where we've gone this extra revolution after the EU Masters and everything happened, where things like Hecarim can actually see play, Skarner can actually see play. Like if SFM picks Volibear in this game, Suning almost 100% loses, which scares me. Like, and the fact Lilia didn't even exist back then, right? So now Lilia is another champion that kind of plays into their playstyle. Bard is a champion that's extremely important for them. Thresh is a champion that's extremely important for them. So like there are these champions that are very good for Suning. And that's what scares me, because like that 1016, even 1016, did Lilia even exist yet? I don't think that she did, right?
No.
Yeah, so that's really concerning for me. That's it. Just everything about this makes me think that Suning has actual chances to win. The money line right now is plus 150. I mean, that's like such a amazing line from a sports book to not actually have to worry about people picking Suning, which makes me want to bet it even more. That's so upsetting. But yeah, my biggest regret is not trying to find a sports book where I could pick Suning to win World Championship before like Bet365 and these other books started posting stuff, because I guess the real time for me to bet it would have been a long time ago. But at this point, I'm just so happy with how things have gone that I don't even really need to bet on them to win off of their success, you know? Because it doesn't seem like a good bet to me right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely was hoping that they would be like plus 200 or something like that. But yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I think we've dissected these matches pretty well for the night.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a 10 to 15 minute video. Now we're 43 minutes and 20 seconds in.
Jesus. All right.
Nailed it.
So, yeah, there's a lot that have been said tonight, obviously, with the length of the video, but we can wrap it up here. Just remember, you can visit the esportsdepartment.com today to get a 10% off your subscription with the code IEDGE. We have projections. John does his video breaking down the slate as well. You can get our show, and we will be doing more shows when Spring Split does come along, because, yes, League of Legends will return, and we hope to see you all there. So for myself, you can follow me at xGhostrider90 at Twitter, Michael, who can be found at League of Items, and Alan, who can be found at Lcspicks. Have a great slate, guys.
See you.